The Victory Garden, what was it, and may it return here in 2020 due to circumstances?
Sure. So the Victory Garden was also called War Garden or Food Gardens for Defense, Food Gardens for Victory, were fruit, vegetables, and herb plots that were at private residences and public parks in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Germany during World War II and World War I. Many people grew the Victory Gardens because they were low on supplies.
And also, it was to keep supply available, to supplement, to add to the supply. And people may think the Victory Garden was just a World War II event, but it actually started in World War I.
Yeah, because people were getting rations of food such as like coffee, meat, canned goods, sugar, butter, flour,
clothing, shoes,
and shoes. And so this was so that they could stretch that essentially. They grew gardens so that they would have fresh vegetables and fruits and whatnot in addition to their ration. It also was good for boosting morale. Mm-hmm. You know, during a wartime, during uncertainty, you're like, I can grow this garden and it's very healthy and it's good for my mental health to be outside. It's good for just me to be outside, move around. Go and play in the dirt. The dirt the soil has some really positive things. It's been proven.
Look up the term farm effect and explains the scientific purposes or scientific behind that. And this was encouraged by the government. And 20 million people, 20 million Americans, we'll talk about the Americans because that's where we are here, answered the call to that. And many people, and we've talked about this on the program and through our videos, you do not have to have 40 acres behind your house in order to have a successful garden. A 4x8 square, 32 square foot raised bed can produce quite a bit of produce. Now, obviously, the more you grow, the more you can preserve. Yeah, that's mathematics. That just the numbers work in that realm. But just because you only have a couple of 4x4 raised beds or plots in the backyard doesn't mean that it's not worth the effort to go about trying to garden or grow something.
Right, for sure. And that's the thing is that you could have a huge garden, but you build your soil, control the weeds, control the pests. If you have deer or rabbit or whatever, eating your vegetables, is a huge garden going to help you? Not necessarily. If you grow efficiently and effectively, you could grow in a smaller plot.
Yeah, and you can do that very successfully in a variety of different gardening methods and techniques. When the Victory Garden came to be, it made a tremendous difference, as we talked about, on the reduction of the necessary requirements or produce that was coming out of the shops and the supermarkets across the country and the world in these wartime years.
Yeah, so in 1942, roughly 15 million families planted Victory Gardens, and by 1944, an estimated of 20 million Victory Gardens produced roughly 8 million tons of food, which was equivalent or of more than 40% of all fruits and vegetables consumed in the United States. So 40% of what people were eating was being grown by just the people. And
we are guilty of the food waste as everybody else is, but it does, I would assume, and I have no way of figuring this out or knowing this, but I would assume out of that 8 million tons of food, or the 40%, there was minimal amount of waste compared to what we are accustomed to and are seeing on a regular basis in the 21st century, in the 2020s now. The amount of food waste, because a farmer doesn't have the profitability or the profitability of it, they dump it and have the insurance pay the difference because it's not worth sending it to the store in order to make dime on every dollar type of situation.
Right. So even like the president, the first lady in 1943 had a Victory Garden at the White House.
Eleanor Roosevelt planted the Victory Garden and it wasn't encouraged to do such, but she felt it was necessary in order to lead the country by example.
And then it looks like President Wilson during World War I, he would graze sheep on the South Lawn to help prevent having to have it mowed.
Yeah, and
so there's definitely like different components of agriculture there.
a different time in American politics to a certain degree there, where you have sheep on the White House lawn, so you don't have to have the lawn crew maintain it and mow it.
Yeah, for sure. So there definitely is some patriotism in a victory garden and taking care of your family. So I would definitely encourage something like that if we go through uncertain times.
And there have been many different organizations that have popped up or been created across the country that involve the term victory garden or garden for victory, of that type of titling, in order to encourage the reintroduction of backyard gardening. And we see it very prevalent on social media pages, that there's a lot of Facebook groups that are new gardeners or organic new gardeners, and they ask very what some people may say is educational questions, but they don't know. And
definitely not.
And Holly and I are the same way. I grew up on a farm. We did things very differently in some aspects. Holly grew up in the city, but yet we have made some very common mistakes that now we look back on and go, well, that was silly, but we made that mistake, and now we're able to help others not make the mistake and be successful the first time around instead of the third or fourth time, because we've made those mistakes as well.
And that's just it. If you've never gardened before, you don't have much experience gardening, you're going to make mistakes. We still make mistakes. It's a journey. You're not going to be perfect at it the first year. There's definitely stuff for newbies, for novice gardeners, available information. We're definitely happy to answer questions, but it's something that is a learning process. And definitely do your research. Just because we live in this growing zone and you live in another growing zone, are we going to grow things at the same time? Not necessarily.
The technique is the same. You may have to alter the dates and times in which you apply that information in order to have the successful crop in which you're trying to grow. So what we can do is in 2020, we are going through situations, and we want to look at the availability of what we have on our properties, whether it's indoor, porch container, patio container, or anything in between, in which we can grow a successful garden, plant plants, and lessen the impact in which we have from purchasing products at the shops and the grocery stores.
I think another thing we can recommend too is if you're going to grow a garden for the first time, maybe your neighbor's growing a garden for the first time, and your friends or whatever with your neighbor, you should communicate with them. Maybe they can grow one thing. Maybe they have a better sun in your area that you can grow in, and they could grow the stuff that fruits, like the tomatoes, peppers, beans, what have you, and maybe you have the shade in your area, you can grow the greens.
Well, and also, containers, people may shy away from that container aspect because, I can't grow a lot. You can grow a lot in a grow bag and a container and buckets and pots on the patio porch deck. There's elevated raised beds if you can't grow in the garden or in the ground, or you don't want to construct raised beds. And what we want to look at is, where we're at now. The shops and the stores have not very much product, but then the supply chain is there. But where the supply chain may break apart is 2 or 3 months down the road in these shops. And that's, a problem in which we may see where, things are good now, but there's going to be a time in which we won't have the product for a while, or the quality of the product is going to be diminished greatly because the harvesting it early or unripened in order to get it to the stores, to get it sold. And we may see that as well 2 or 3 months down the road because of the situation that we're in. Now, for some people in areas in which farmer markets will be allowed or are allowed, you want to support them. You want to go to your local farmer's market because, on average, a farmer who sells at a farmer's market, and these are just kind of general pricing here, they'll make about 90 cents per dollar if they sell it at a farmer's market, but they're only going to make about 20 cents on the dollar if they sell it to a garden or of a grocery store or a shop. So support them in the local farmer's market and do that if you can do it at all.
I would definitely recommend using farmers markets as well. And just keeping in mind that if you grow this food, grow what you know you're going to eat. Grow what you know that you can grow. Like here, obviously we're in Wisconsin. We cannot grow banana plants, but maybe you and people who are in Florida or the South can grow banana plants. So definitely keep that in mind about where you are. And also keep in mind about storing things properly. There's a lot of vegetables that you can store for a long time. And so that's something to keep in mind as well.
And when I was talking about the 2 or 3 months down the road, that's called supply chain shock, where everything's good now, supply chain is there, but there's a deficiency at a certain point where the quality is not there or the product may not be there until it can be grown and harvested accordingly to the requirements in which the buyer, the grocery store, is requiring. So Victory Gardens, World War I, World War II, I think we're going to see somewhat. I'm seeing more people who have never gardened before talking about, I want to grow something here in 2020 because of the situation in which we're in. But also, I think there's the curiosity of, hey, I can do something to help. And by growing a garden, I can lessen the impact in which I have on the supply chain.
Oh, for sure. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.